Buckle up for the Money Vehicle Movement podcast. I'm Jedidiah Collins, your host and driving instructor on this journey through speaking the language of money. Twists, turns, and avoiding those money potholes, we'll cover it all on our road trip to financial freedom. Engines ready? Then let's drive. This is going to be awesome. This is going to be easy as somebody I admire in a creative lane and just paving his own path. I'm really excited to, give your guidance, your advice, and your insights to athletes, young entrepreneurs, and students across the country. So, Jack Betts, you are not the name everybody threw up when NIL started to come to fruition, and yet you have been a name that a lot of people have started to hear, understand. Give us a little background on kind of who you are, but more importantly, how you started to become a creator and see this as a new opportunity.
Yeah. So first of all, just a kid who grew up in Dallas, Texas. I'm right in the backyard of SMU, which I'm going to be pursuing my master's from starting this fall. But for undergrad, I went way up north. I attended Amherst College for 4 years, 4-year member of the football team, English and Native American Studies major. And so people always ask me, so how in the world did you get involved with NIL? Well, to begin that story, we've got to go way back to when NIL legislation was actually approved in 2021. Family vacation, Aspen, Colorado. We escape the Texas summers every single summer to go up to Colorado. And I'm sitting at the dinner table and my phone starts blowing up. NIL legislation approved. Athletes can now capitalize off their name, image, and likeness. And so many brands started coming to mind. And I was talking to my parents. I'm like, oh my gosh, I have so many ideas. Started texting my teammates, guys, you know what this means? They brought me down a level. They brought me back down to earth. Jack, you realize we're at a Division III school in the middle of Western Massachusetts. We are the last folks on people's mind to begin reaching out to regarding NIL. And so you fast forward a little bit, fast forward about 6 months as I'm seeing all these things whiz by my face, kind of sitting from the sidelines. In January of 2022, I take a gap semester from Amherst instead of going to study abroad. And what that gap semester allowed me to do was to come back for another season of football because COVID and NESCAC rules, it's all a whole long story. But essentially in January of 2022, I get this DM on Instagram from this company called Lifestyle Bands. And they reach out to me asking, would you be interested in joining our NIL cohort of athletes? I'm sitting there thinking, what in the heck does this company want to do with, at the time, somebody who has one career reception, 2,000 Instagram followers, private Instagram account? To this day, I have no idea why they reached out, but I'm not complaining.
Don't ask questions.
Oh, no, sir. Absolutely not. And so I sit down with my parents at the dinner table. Both of my parents are lawyers. We review the contract. We kind of talk about it. We're like, what's the worst that can happen? And from then on, I spent that entire spring beginning my career in content creation, Googling NIL at the Division III level. And when that search came back empty, that's when I really told myself, okay, I want to be the change that I want to see. I want to be the name that pops up when somebody at the Division III level is like, okay, is this even possible? Is this even a thing? Lo and behold, it was a thing. And not to give myself a pat on the back, but it's been a long journey to get to this point, and I'm just extremely grateful for the entire journey.
Hey man, part of this game is knowing when you got to market yourself. I know you don't want to toot your own horn, so I'll toot, man. You've done an amazing job, and I love that the first wave of hey guys, we're gonna go crush NIL. Everybody was like, so okay, sit down for a second. Let me explain to you. Honestly, again, you're a college student, you're a smart kid, you have two parents who are lawyers. You just said I sat down with my parents and went through the contract. Yes. How many NIL athletes do you think did that as their first step?
I could probably count on one hand the amount of athletes who did that. But, if you've got the resources at your disposal, you might as well use them.
I could not agree more. And just because it is part of your story, brother, and it is such a unique piece, you mentioned very briefly Native American studies in your studies at Amherst. I got to call out one because I want to get to how you find your voice and how you become the founder of Make Your Own Legacy. Talk a little bit about your legacy for a second.
I'd love to. So a little backstory on me. I was actually adopted from Seattle, Washington, basically right after I was born. And I said, I grew up in Dallas. I was born in Seattle, hopped right on a plane after I was born and came to Texas. And part of my heritage, something that I'm extremely proud of, is my Cherokee heritage. Growing up in Texas, going to the high school I went to, I think the extent of Native American studies and Native American history we covered was, yeah, y'all had the Trail of Tears. That sucked. Anyways, let's continue on with everything,
Move on.
every possible subject. And so,
It's not funny. It's not funny.
It's not funny, but it is reality.
Yeah.
And so when I was considering where I wanted to further my, not only my athletic career, but also my academic career, way back in, this going into my senior summer of high school, I was kind of thinking, look, I want to go somewhere where I can not only continue playing football, but also receive an elite education. And Amherst College really offered the best of both worlds. That's why I think Division III schools in general offer the best of both worlds. My time at Amherst College has really been highlighted with me really recapturing and coming into what it means to be an Indigenous man in today's world, to be of Indigenous heritage in today's culture. I've spent a lot of time one-on-one with a lot of my Native American studies professors who have helped me whether get back into a couple practices, some cultural practices such as burning sage, or some drum circles that I've been a participant of, which were so much fun. You can really just feel the energy within the room when you sit down and participate in those kinds of things. And I've never done anything along those lines before. Mm-hmm. And so I was extremely grateful to have such a wildly welcoming community that was already built in at Amherst. I'm also a member of the Native and Indigenous Studies Association at Amherst, as well as the Council of Amherst College Student Athletes of Color. So having that type of platform to really have my voice heard and find ways in which I can become more well acquainted with something that I've been disconnected with for 18 to 20-ish years up until my time at Amherst, it was really just an incredible feeling. And I am eternally grateful for my time at Amherst, because now that I'm back in Texas, Oklahoma is just to the north of us. So I'm going to find ways in which I can get onto the Cherokee Reservation, possibly get in with the governor, I think is what the title is called, of the man who runs everything within the nation. And I'm super excited to get more involved and get back to where I'm supposed to be,
And that is, I mean, you start talking about, hey, I set out to be somebody. When you Google or look up, can Division III athletes become NIL? Man, to be a leader and to be a face of an entire people going to not just college, but becoming athletes, becoming entrepreneurs, being a guiding light, it's just really tremendous to see kind of the path that you paved for yourself, and then to see what impact in the next decade, in the next generation, it will truly have. As you look at it, though, I got to imagine some of your background has given you confidence to get out and speak. You've been very interested in who you are, both as an individual, as the world sees you. So how did you, lifestyle brand, somebody reaches out to you and says, hey, can you help us do this? How do you take that moment and then start to create an identity of yourself? How did you become a creator?
I think I just took it upon myself, as I mentioned earlier, to be the change that I wanted to see. I had absolutely no background. I mean, literally up until the point that brand reached out to me, I probably posted on Instagram once every year or so, maybe like an end of season update, things along those lines. And I was kind of like, okay, if I want to get involved with this, I've got to begin taking notes from some of the best in the business. So I began doing a little research. I began looking on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter. What types of content is being created currently by college athletes, and what brands are these athletes partnering with? And that was a really important strategy in my development. And when you think about the type of message that I aim to convey, the type of brand that I wanted to create, I think it really was centered around Division III athletes are people too. Division III athletes are not only elite athletes, but we are artists. We're creative, talented, inspiring, entertaining, and we're ingenious. And I think that we're beginning to get the type of national recognition that we need. And I wanted to be on the front line of what it means to be a D3 creator. I wanted people to look at me and sort of be like, okay, that's what a Division III athlete is. Not only success on the field, but also success off the field. That's what I set out to do. And I think that I pretty much well accomplished that.
And you are defining this modern day athlete, this person who sees himself as an athlete. And I know I've talked to enough professional athletes who have gone through a transition that has never really kind of come to that realization of who they are beyond their game.
Right.
As we do look at it, though, this creation of NIL, I've said, I think the greatest gift it is giving college athletes and very quickly high school athletes is that introduction to being an athlete. And like, what else are you? Who else are you? Like you said, you're a very interesting people off the field. So as you identify that, like, how can, if I am starting out, like, how do I begin down that path of making my own legacy, finding my own voice? Like, what would you give? And then we're going to pivot into the kind of financial aspect of this whole world. But I talk to so many people who say, Jed, I want to start creating. I have something to say. How do I get going?
I think it's important just to take that leap. When people come to me and they're like, I don't know like what to do, like I don't know how to get started. The number one thing that you need to do is it's either, one day or day one. That's a quote somebody
Love
told
that.
me. I can't remember
I
who
saw it
told it
from
to
The
me.
Rock. I'm going to give it to
From The
Dwayne
Rock? Okay,
Johnson.
Dwayne Johnson, shout out.
There you go.
But no, I think it is really important. I had absolutely no idea what my niche was, what the type of content I was even going to create. But it really just began flowing to me and kind of coming to me that this isn't something that has been done before. So finding ways in which you can pave your own path, make your own legacy, I don't know, is extremely important. And just ensuring that you're having fun with it. If you're always going to be worried about, what is the public perception going to be of me, or how are people going to react to it, or am I going to get like hate comments or things along those lines? Who cares?
Yeah.
Like the only opinion that matters at the end of the day is the person that you look in the mirror and see every single night. That's what matters most to me. So in terms of getting started, I think there are a lot of great platforms out there that if you don't know how to reach out to brands directly, I think they can do that on your behalf. I know there's a couple NIL marketplaces out there that can definitely help along those lines. But I mean, when it comes to reaching out to brands and sort of being your own advocate, nobody else is going to do it for you. So being your own advocate, doing it on your own behalf, and not waiting for it to fall into your lap. I know the story that I just gave about it falling into my lap directly goes against everything that I'm saying right now. But, do as I say, not as I do, I guess. I don't know.
There you go.
But
the world has changed.
Exactly. It's all about being proactive. It's all about going out and get it and having that hustler's mentality. And that's what I operate off of every single day.
And I love this, and I'm going to ask you. I'm going to challenge you. I didn't give you this before we jumped on. If Jack Betts could identify and define himself in 3 words, and I'm going to ask you that because a lot of athletes that ask me, they say, Jed, how do I get started? You said, doesn't matter unless you look at that person in the mirror and you're still happy and confident with what they are doing and what they are saying. I think it starts with looking in that mirror and realizing it might be 1 word, might be 3 words, but it is very focused on what brand you want to put out. If I could identify you in 3 words, what would those words be?
That's a really difficult one. I think you mentioned confident.
There you go.
You mentioned, but what do I want to define myself by?
Bingo.
That is tough on the spot.
I would say breaking stereotypes.
Yeah, well, yes, as well. I'd say trailblazer. I'd say
trailblazer. Better.
I'd say advocate. I'd say barrier breaker. I don't know.
Proactive for sure, bro. No, but trailblazer, advocate. Yes, I think those are 2 that identify you very well.
Absolutely.
And that is just the beginning of it. And so what I would love to do is kind of pivot a little bit as we're talking. Money Vehicle is focused on helping students. Absolutely. And I didn't start this thing 10 years ago knowing, oh, hey, high schools are going to require it and NIL is going to be a thing. I don't know if you've seen the news. NIL is not just colleges anymore. It's in high schools, and it is coming to a school near you. Mm-hmm. So with that understanding, your first paycheck comes in. What was your knowledge of money? Having two lawyers as parents is great in an education, in a legal sense.
Mm-hmm.
As somebody who has a fellow lawyer as a father, doesn't mean they're financially literate or savvy. So those are two different worlds. How did you handle your first paycheck, or what were your first thoughts as you started receiving money?
My first thoughts went to, wow, this is the first time that I'm having like a steady income come in every now and then. This is the first time that a large sum of money I'm finding myself coming into ownership of, and it's extremely important that I don't blow all of this almost immediately. I wanted to find ways in which I could be smart about my money. I could manage it efficiently. I could possibly save, invest, open a brokerage account somehow. I'm not super savvy in all of that. As I mentioned, English and Native American Studies, numbers are not my thing.
Yeah.
But no, I think initially the first thing that came to mind is I want to make sure that I am going to be secure, and I want to make sure that, I don't know, this type of money that I'm making right now will be able to teach me how to effectively and efficiently manage my money sometime down the line.
And so as you first got that, you said, hey, a brokerage account, that's the goal, because I want to start investing. But how do you, what was your first, you went and you set up your bank accounts, but what was that first hope of, I don't know exactly how much is going to come in. I don't want to blow it all, which is a great first thought. How did you even begin to start to manage this? Because every college athlete overnight is becoming a professional athlete. And we've seen the horror stories of professional athletes. You don't need to go into too much, but when you started setting up that budget, that cash management system, what were the first kind of actions you took to even kind of corral that?
Well, I think number one, you've got to identify, what am I going to be using this money for? Number one, I had to take care of the necessities. I was fortunate enough that, I'm not paying for rent every single month. I lived on campus all 4 years. There weren't a lot of off-campus living options to begin with at Amherst. But rent wasn't something that I needed to worry about. Week to week eating. I was a dining hall connoisseur, so I went there quite often. So having to worry about paying for my next meal wasn't necessarily a big stressor, but I think sometimes it was important to recognize, okay, I've got to take care of putting this money away. And if I don't need to use it, let's not use it. Maybe buying a new pair of cleats was the type of investment that I was most worried about. Taking the guys out to dinner was kind of the next most important investment that I was worrying about. But as my time outside of collegiate athletics is beginning right now, I'm going to have to begin thinking about a lot more important things, such as paying for college, paying rent, things along those lines. So recognizing what needs to be taken care of, taking care of your necessities, finding ways in which you can set money aside to begin investing in things along those lines, and then finally putting away some a rainy day fund, something a little bit like that, money that is for superfluous purchases like that. Goodness gracious.
Yeah.
I think it is important just to prioritize and be making these types of lists, regardless of your age. You could be 16 years old right now, making several $1,000s in high school and NIL, or you could be 24, fresh out of college. I'm about to turn 24 in November. The earlier you start, the better, though, is a great piece of advice.
And that's all we're trying to do is start. And that doesn't mean you're starting to make money. It's just you're starting to have a conversation around what being financially literate means and is. And it is just such a humbling notion to think about myself at 19, 20, getting paychecks. And yeah, like you said, you try to force yourself to think of a future you haven't experienced. And that is an immense challenge to a lot of people. So I look at where you're going, the continual studies. What are the conversations like as you're leaving one locker room, you're going to pursue more education? What are the conversations or questions you're getting around how, Jack, you're succeeding in NIL? What is that investment question? What are people wanting to know and do? I know you have some particular interests in some unique places. When we talk about levels of investing, you're talking level 3 private equity and kind of VC funds. But how do you pave that path? What are you learning about today that you think a lot more athletes should understand?
Obviously, number one, a lot of athletes come to me asking about financial literacy. I'm not going to be that guy for them, but I can be the guy to point you in the right direction. Athletes come to me asking about taxes. Athletes come to me asking about what are ways that I can make my money work for me. I mean, it's awfully reminiscent of the panel that I spoke on for Invesco QQQ at this year's past NIL Summit. I was the only student athlete up there. The other folks up there were working for Invesco, TurboTax, and I can't remember who else, but it's very important. Like the earlier, the better is seems to be the advice nowadays. I started my career in NIL when I was 21. I'm 23 now. And had I started when I was coming in when I was 18, I mean, I could have started the investment portfolio way earlier. And so a lot of the athletes do need some guidance. And I think schools do need to do a better job providing financial literacy advice to a lot of these athletes. Because the Caleb Williams and the Caitlin Clarks of the world, they're making millions of dollars and they're going to be taken care of. But what about, the dude who's just coming off the bench and maybe he's making a decent sum, but he has absolutely no idea what he's going to do with that maybe $10,000, $20,000 that he's bringing in as a result of being a member of the collective or things along those lines. So I don't know. I think that there is a need in the world right now. I mean, shout out you for the work that you're doing, obviously, but
Hey, toot, I like it. Good plug.
But no, I think that a lot of the athletes come to me with questions along the lines of they want to make sure they understand that they're not going to be playing their sport professionally. None of us are going to be playing our sport until we're 60. So finding ways we can make our money work for us and finding ways in which we can invest in our future right now, that's really the hot topic of discussion.
You mentioned some people coming to you asking about taxes. You're on a panel with somebody from TurboTax. I have gotten and seen enough like social media posts around, hey, every NIL athlete's going to get a 1099 and going to have to file taxes. And to see some of the responses from college athletes of like, no, I transferred. Like, I don't need to do that. Or like 1099, like, what is it? What are you talking about? It is amazing. Again, and it's funny and it's a good story, but it is not funny at all to realize every one of them has a tax liability. And part of our world is we pay into the society we belong to, and it is a good give and take in exchange. We can all debate on exactly how it works. But as you do look at kind of being introduced to that tax lens, like how did that education come to you your first year? You got your first couple brands, first couple paychecks. How did you gather? Did you know 1099s were coming? How did you start gathering those?
Well, I was fortunate enough to be able to turn to my parents who hooked me up with our financial guy. I was extremely fortunate to have them help me in my education, working towards becoming financially literate, but they didn't do everything for me. They helped a little bit, but they did have me sit down and talk to the guy. So I think it was extremely important to, like you said, this agency piece of this, athletes taking it upon themselves to go out and make sure that they're taken care of. I know a lot of athletes don't have the I guess, ability to have two lawyers as parents who can help them set them up with their financial guy. But it is everything that we do share the burden, and it is going to be put upon us to take care of it. And there are some horror stories, I'm sure, out there of a couple athletes not knowing that they had to take care of it. But I don't know. I think it's just a part of growing up and part of the life lessons that you learn during your time in NIL is that you're going to have to grow up really quickly and you're going to have to become well versed in all of these financial types of dialogues that everybody's going to be having. And at Amherst, we had, I mean, if we go all the way back to the fall of 2021, right after NIL was passed, we had one discussion around NIL. It's a thing. I guess the undertone in the room was that they didn't expect any of us to even get a single NIL deal. What I would have appreciated is possibly in the event that you do, we have a couple folks on campus, all these massive schools, I'm sure they've got their own financial people on campus to help their athletes out. But I don't know. I think that it is extremely important to recognize this and have agency over your finances and things along those lines. It's something that I'm an extreme advocate of, and I speak to my athletes about frequently.
Yeah. And as we look at it, if you made over about $600, which is not a whole lot of money from someone, you're going to get a 1099. That may be, in some cases, Jack, how many brands have you worked with over the last 2-3 years?
Portfolio is around 40.
40. So that means he's getting 40 different companies to send him a tax document, of which the only person responsible for gathering, filing, and making sure it is payable is Jack Betts. And that's what's amazing is you are not W-2 employees. People look at like NFL players and are like, oh, well, how did they figure it all out? They work for an organization and a team. This could not be further from the truth. Now, we want to play some thought experiments around where the NCAA or really college sports in general is going to be going. Yeah, there may be, like at Texas, a whole financial planning section and tax group and yada, yada, yada down the road in the athletic department. But for now, it is responsibility on you as the NIL athlete, as the 1099 contractor. Take me to a moment that, you are a lifelong learner. You look at the last 3 years, you've continued to see avenues you didn't know about but are experiencing. What are you learning about today? What is interesting you and kind of what are you researching? I know you're starting studies in the fall, but what does the next like four to 6 months look like that Jack's going to go learn?
So the Make Your Own Legacy Academy is something that I founded in the summer of 2022. And the aim of that was to provide educational resources for these athletes who are coming from similar Division III schools, similar smaller market institutions whose schools don't have the type of resources readily at the disposal to help their athletes really realize their true NIL potential. And so that's where we stepped in. I'm beginning to sort of move into the consulting space. And what I mean by that, previously it was just providing education. I would help these athletes out, help them understand what's the best approach, reaching out to brands and things along those lines, types of content creation ideas. And so now I'm moving into the consulting side of things, in which I'm helping hands-on with these athletes, possibly reaching out to brands on their behalf, giving them the names of people to reach out at these brands as well. So the consulting side has been extremely interesting. Simultaneously, I'm going to be doing a lot of guest speaking events as well. Actually, my high school, just about 2-3 weeks ago, I sat down with my former head football coach, and he wants me to come in and do some preliminary NIL education, given it's not legal for high school athletes here in Texas. He wants to do some preliminary NIL education for his guys who are going to be playing somewhere next fall. And so I think guest speaking opportunities along those lines, that's something that I'm prioritizing. I'm speaking on my ESD alumni panel, my high school alumni panel sometime in April. And I don't know. I think, like you mentioned, I love learning. I love doing new things, being comfortable with the uncomfortable. So I think we're still trying to figure that out, honestly. But I'm super excited to go back to school beginning this fall at SMU and hoping I can impact campus and leave it better than when I found it. And it's always something that I live by almost every single day. When you enter a space, you want to make sure by the time you leave, it's become a better place. And so getting involved on SMU's campus, however I can, possibly bringing in my experience into the athletic department. I mentioned a graduate assistantship opportunity, perhaps with the football team. Those are some things that I'm prioritizing right now, and I'm hoping they come to fruition.
Hey, brother, you put it out there, you keep hustling, and the thing I love about you is you are so proactive in it. You don't just leave it up to hope or chance. Like you just said, who can I reach out to? Who can I put in? How can I do work to make that dream, make that thought become a reality? I think that is a tremendous lesson for young people, students, myself, really anyone today is go make your future. As we look at it, one question I love to ask people, what is the best thing you have purchased? What is the best thing you have used money for?
Oh, wow. Well, I'm kind of sitting here at my workstation, and I built this PC in like 4 years ago. And it was sort of like a joint venture. Some of my parents paid for it, et cetera, et cetera. But something that I'm on every single day, something that helps me do the work that I love to do, help athletes, reach out to athletes, is this computer right here. So it's just an example of sort of investing in your future. It's something that helps me every single day. Sometimes you got to spend money to make money. And I mean, I do Photoshop, I do everything. The entire Make Your Own Legacy Academy is located within the hard drive of this computer right here. So I'd say this is definitely one of my top purchases. Of course, it is a gaming PC, so I have a little fun on the side as well. You've got to always ensure the leisure part is taken care of. but it is the best example of work and play combined. So I'd say my PC that I've got right here.
That's a good investment. Like you said, it has become a business. It's become your place of escape and you're enjoyable. The only thing I will say from chapter 8 in Money Vehicle is you said your entire business is on that laptop. We need to back that thing up, have an external hard drive. That's just part of the game, part of the business.
Amen.
Here's the last question I'm going to ask you. What's something you spent money on that you wouldn't buy again?
That is a tough one. Because I'm actually quite frugal, believe it or not. I don't really like spending a lot of money. I don't know if anything immediately comes to mind. I'm even trying to look around and see.
I believe it.
I mean, that might be a good sign, right?
That is as a college student making money, man. That's not a bad one. That is not a bad one. Jack, any parting words, any thoughts you would say? You're standing, like you said, you're going to go back to your high school. Doesn't have to be the athletic department. Could just be a room full of students. 100 students are in front of you. What's one thing you want to make sure they hear again before you check out today?
I mentioned it earlier, but don't allow the perception of others dictate your own perception of self. There's going to be a lot of people who are going to have a lot of opinions. Trust me, I could go through my Instagram posts, my TikTok posts right now, and there are plenty of unpleasant comments on those. And some people like to delete them, but I think I like to keep them on there just to remind myself, if you don't have haters, then you aren't doing something right. That's the whole thing. And just continuing to live every single day with a purpose. Don't let the whole thing is you want to get 1% better every single day. I know I'm about to go get a workout in right now. This morning, I spent some time doing a little bit of reading, doing a little bit of poetry reading, actually, because even though I'm done with my English major, I'm still going to read a book. That's one thing about me. And then also, if you're afraid to get into the world of NIL, if you're afraid to become a content creator, the best piece of advice I can give you is just take the leap. Worst thing that can happen is a brand tells you no. You're not going to lose your eligibility. No one's going to die. You're not going to get an F in a class. The worst thing that's going to happen is somebody tells you no. And that's just a part of life. You learn a lot of life lessons during your time in NIL. I could name off quite a few right now, actually. But if anybody wants to connect, if anybody wants to sit down, I don't know if this is a time for me to plug my social media. So cut me off.
Absolutely.
Okay, perfect.
Absolutely.
Instagram, jbets21, Twitter, jrbets21, my website, jack-bets.com. I love meeting new people, new connections, LinkedIn, Jack Bets as well. So feel free to reach out. And yeah, I'd love to be a resource to you, of course, in whatever capacity I can be.
Brother, I am honored, humbled that we got connected. I hope our paths and journeys continue to cross. That message you just said, that Kaizen philosophy, we got to get 1% better. But more importantly, you got to take the leap. You can't get better until you're in the game. And wow, what your message around the perception, and it goes back to the man in the arena kind of concept. Everybody outside the game is going to tell you their opinion, but they're not playing the game. Just get in the game and try to get better at it. Jack, you're a leader, brother. You're just beginning your journey. You are a trailblazer, and I appreciate you giving your knowledge and time to the Money Vehicle movement. So thank you, brother.
Jed, thank you.
Thank you for investing in your greatest asset. If you want to keep learning how to drive your money vehicle, make sure to subscribe to the Money Vehicle Movement podcast. Until our next pit stop together, stop working for money and start making money work for you.